Hello and welcome to Padre's Corner. It's the show where we talk about, well, pretty much anything we want to talk about. That's right, here on the Twit TV network, we thought that maybe we needed something, a forum, a spot, an hour or two a week where we could listen to the good boys and girls, the men, the women, the geeks and the gals of chat room and throw up the stories that maybe we missed throughout the week. And so for the next hour or so, I'm going to take you through some of the stories that I think are deserving of our geek cred. Now, what are we going to start off with? Well, I think there is no better way to start a weekend than by talking about some full immersion cooling. That's right. You know, you real geeks know what I'm talking about. Do you remember when you first started building your own system and you dreamed of having an immersion rig? Now, the idea was you put all the components into some dielectric fluid, which was non-conductive, which allowed you to, well, submerge it. Now, if you wanted to do this, you had to soak the materials in mineral oil, or you had to buy that crazy expensive floor inert. So for most of us, it was out of reach. But it seems now that, well, some big players are going the full immersion route, and we may be seeing some of these computers in the very near future. Now, specifically, SGI and Intel are getting together to create a floor inert submerged computer. Now, what is this going to do for them? It allows them to make much smaller components, much smaller computers, because they don't have to worry about heat dissipation. If you have air cooling, you can only make your traces so small before you have to worry about your parts actually melting. Well, if you have a full immersion rig using some exotic fluid, it allows you to get those traces together. It allows you to put the components closer together, and it allows you to design your computers without worrying about things like heat sinks and fans and airflow, but rather everything surrounding the computer is going to cool it off. Now, they're using a newly developed fluid called Novec by 3M. Now, this fluid is dielectric, like floor inert or mineral oil, so it won't cause shorts. And Novec is already used in fire suppression systems in sensitive electronic areas, so they know it's going to work. Now, imagine this. Combine this with a flash drive, and you can have the dream of a fully immersed computer. That's right. You don't have to worry about a spinning hard drive. That was the old problem with making your own, which is if you tried to immerse a hard drive, of course, since it had moving parts and because it actually still used outside air, it's not a completely sealed unit, you would get mineral oil into the drive and you would kill it. Now, I still foresee one major problem. And again, this is the problem that most of us who tried to build our own systems found when we built our submerged rigs. And that is, it's great, it's cool, but if you ever have to service it, it's crazy, crazy messy. Especially if you use mineral oil, it gets everywhere. And there's no real way to get it off. Now, why would someone go through all the trouble of creating an immersed rig if you're going to have that problem? Because even this Novec stuff, it's not the easiest substance to clean off. And especially if you're talking about volume, it can be quite hilariously bad, hilariously messy. Well, the reason why they're doing it is because they're thinking of these systems for server farms. Now, these server farms are trying to pack more and more computers into the same amount of space, but one of the big things they're running into is cooling. Up to 90% of the power for a data center is used just to cool off the servers contained within the data center. So if you could figure out a way to centralize that cooling, like, for example, a continuous flow of Novec through all your servers, you only have to worry about one hot point, just the heat exchange. You put in cool Novec at the top, you circulate it through all the servers that are in your rack, you get hot Novec at the bottom, you heat exchange, rinse, and repeat. Now, it's going to be a while before this kind of technology makes its way down into the consumer level, but I thought it's actually kind of cool. It's a nice way to look at an old hobby and give it some new life. Let's go on to the next story about freaking space. Well, of course we're going to talk about space. You know I loves me some space, specifically about the Mars rovers. Now, scary, but I just realized the other night that there are some people who are watching this show who weren't alive when we landed the Mars rovers. You know, it's the spirit and the opportunity. I remember that was back in 2004, and Opportunity started its exploration more than a decade ago. Now, since the landing of the rover, which, by the way, was supposed to have an operational mission of 90 days, we have seen that little bugger go on for 3,736 days past its original 90-day mission. Unfortunately, what Mission Control has realized is that the rover's solar panels are becoming increasingly clouded by dust. That's right. It's just there's a lot of dust on the lunar surface, and unfortunately, it's starting to die. Now, this last January, they put the rover into sort of maintenance mode. They got it ready for the Martian winter, and they took a panorama of the rover. They basically extended the camera, and they allowed everyone to see what the rover looked like. It was horrible. It was almost completely covered in dust before it went into its winter slumber mode. But after, they did another panorama, and they found this. Now, looking at this, you can see exactly how much dust has been brushed off. It looks as if someone has gone with a Brillo pad and just, even out of the crevices. Now, this is all because of wind action on Mars. The dust storms have actually cleaned off a nice chunk of that dust. And what they're seeing is that they're exceeding the previous 60% efficiency that they were getting out of their solar panels, which means that opportunity has a long, long way to go. Now, what we would like to see in the near future is we would like to see spacecraft that have some sort of way to do some sort of self-cleaning. Because, yes, it's cool that the spacecraft was able to be cleaned by Mars, hopefully just by the wind. But ultimately, if we do want to do these sort of extraterrestrial missions, we're going to need a way to do remote maintenance of vehicles if we expect them to last beyond their stated lives. Now, how about this? Let's move away from space and move towards the Earth. Specifically, have you ever worried about beaming sun into a valley of darkness? Well, if you live in Norway, yeah, you have. A Norwegian town called Rjukan, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, fellas, so if you are from Norway, sorry about that. They spend 6 months of the year without seeing the sun. The problem is that it's nestled in a mountain ridge. The town is shielded from the sun by that ridge, which leaves the townspeople in this sort of shadowy darkness for half of the year. Martin Anderson, who is a conceptual artist, had an idea. He thought, well, what if we install solar-powered, computer-controlled mirrors that would bounce sunlight from the top of the ridge down into the valley? Well, he went ahead and did his project. It cost them just under $1 million, and believe it or not, it's actually kind of cool. What they have found is that they've been able to get sort of a sunlight moment in the square. Now, the people describe it as being sort of an attraction. This thing allows people to get out after Mass, after their townly activities, and gather for those slivers of sun and just sort of enjoy. They even say people have been taking out their lawn chairs to get a little bit of tanning done. Now, it's not all sun and roses here. We know that they spent roughly $840,000 US on the system. We know that it's a town of 6,000, so that's actually quite a bit of money. And we know that the system died at least once because it was so cloudy, the solar panels weren't able to get enough power to power the computer to charge the tracking system. Now, right now, there's sort of a recall vote. About 1,600 members of the town, so almost a third, want to discontinue the use of the mirrors because they don't want to put extra maintenance. And essentially, they say, well, it was kind of a stupid idea. I don't know why we did it. But for me, the idea of beaming light in the darkness, it really does appeal to my priestly side. Speaking of my priestly side, I thought maybe now might be a good time to listen to a Good Friday song from our friend, Ali Spags.
It's Good Friday, and don't freak out, but I looked it up, and there are 0 Good Friday carols. What? So I took this opportunity to write the best Good Friday carol in the world. Also, it's the worst.
It's the most Googled song, the internet search for this all week long.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, Good Friday! It's Good Friday, Jesus' die day, when he said, BRB, okay? Hey, Good Friday! It's Good Friday, suck it all the other Fridays. This is the superior Friday. How would you describe this Friday? I'd put an adjective in front of the Friday. Hey, Good Friday!
And thank you, Valley Spags, for getting us into the Easter spirit. I'm pretty sure that I am now going to be defrocked. Now let's move away from Good Friday and talk a little about something that all of us know and we probably love, and that is lithium. Wait, you don't love lithium? Well, why not? You should. It's the cornerstone of everything you know as a gadgeteer. If you're watching This Week in Tech, it means that you've probably got some products that are using lithium-powered batteries at this very moment. Now, what's so interesting about lithium? Well, what's interesting is the fact that it allows us to have a much higher power density, energy density than we've had in previous batteries. If, again, you're one of these youngsters, you may not remember that there was a time before lithium. There was a time when most of us had to get by with nickel-cadmium batteries, and they were okay. They were fine, but there were a couple of major disadvantages with using that technology. The first is that they only provided 1.2 volts per cell, which is less than the 1.5 volts that we're typically used to from, commercial batteries. The other thing is that it had a pronounced memory effect. Those of you, again, who are old enough to have used nickel-cadmium powered laptops or devices, remember there was always that warning to run the device down, not to always charge it after 5%, 10% loss, because eventually the battery wouldn't be able to be discharged past that point. It's the memory effect. Also, they just didn't really have a really good energy density. They could store a little bit of power, but it was really a minuscule amount when you compared it to, say, alkali batteries, the disposable, non-rechargeable types. Then in 1991, Sony changed the landscape by releasing the first commercial lithium-ion battery. Now, it produced 1.5 volts per cell, which was great because now it was standard with what we saw from, again, those commercial batteries, AAA, AA, C, D, whatever it was going to be. Also, it didn't have a pronounced memory effect, and it had really, really good energy density. You could pack a lot more power into the same amount of space. One of my personal favorite benefits was that it didn't have a slow discharge, or at least not as a bad discharge as you had with NiCads. When you had NiCad batteries, after 6 months, they had drained themselves. It was a phenomenon of the NiCad battery. You just knew that if you didn't leave it in the charger, eventually it was going to be zero charged when you popped it into your device. Not so with lithium-ion. Yes, you do get a drain, but it is much less pronounced, and normally it's not enough to bother us. So, all battery tech today uses lithium, at least all the more advanced battery tech. Even the batteries that you find inside your hybrid car are going to use some sort of lithium, from lithium-ion to lithium iron phosphate to lithium polymer to lithium vanadium is the new flavor. Each of these offers us a higher energy density, which we really, really like. Now, all lithium battery technology operates essentially the same way. You have a positive and you have a negative electrode. You also have an electrolyte that fits between the two electrodes that is the substance that through its chemical composition stores power. You can either charge it or you could discharge it. Now, when the circuit is completed, the chemical reaction takes place in the cell and current flows to the positive electrode, which gives you power. That's what powers your phone. That's what powers your laptop. That's what powers the battery backup on your desktop. Essentially, all battery tech is the same. Where lithium comes into play is that it's such a huge part of the process in high-density storage cells because of the unique contributions of lithium. Lithium, if you're a chemistry buff, you know that it's actually the third element on the periodic table. It's only below hydrogen and helium, but it's a metal, and more importantly, it's an alkali metal, so it's reactive. What that means is that lithium allows us to take advantage of metallic alkali properties, but have something that is so light that it will actually float on top of oil. That's right, pure lithium is lighter than oil. With lithium, you're allowed to make these lithium salts in the electrolyte, which let you pack in far more power into that given space, which again increases energy density, and we like that. So, why are we talking about this? Well, it's not just because everything we use is powered by some sort of lithium ion, some sort of lithium tech. It's also because we know where lithium comes from. Believe it or not, if you were to look at Google Maps right now, you would see something in South America. Just go ahead and sort of zoom in. It's near Bolivia. You see this little white splotch that you're going to see on the screen? Yeah, that is actually the world's largest deposit of lithium. This is a salt lake to the west of Bolivia that is comprised almost completely of pure and slightly tainted lithium. What they've been doing the last couple of years is they've been they've been crystallizing this stuff, and they've been scooping it off, purifying it, and then using it for battery and other technologies. Now, it's not just batteries. Purified lithium is also used as a medication for bipolar patients. We don't know exactly how it works, but we think it has something to do with the free ions of lithium smoothing out the highs and the lows of a bipolar person. But it is a fascinating substance and something that we're going to see more and more of. I mean, when you think of the actual chemistry of lithium being that third element on the periodic table, being of such high energy density, any technology that we have for storing power that's going to be using an electrode and electrolyte solution is most likely going to be using lithium. Now, when we come back, we've got a special guest. We're going to be bringing back an old-timer to the Twit TV network. But before that, I thought now might be a good time to maybe do a more plain speak English explanation of what the Heartbleed bug is. So we want to talk about Heartbleed because it actually addresses something very, very basic in programming and something that's very important. It's all about sanitizing inputs. It's about
sanitizing your comments.
Your comment. Well, sanitizing your code.
Yes,
you have to make sure that the data that you receive is what you expected.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, the writer of the piece of code in OpenSSL that is responsible for the Heartbleed bug didn't do that. Now, Brian, do you actually have a link for the GitHub that has all the OpenSSL code? While you get that up, let me really briefly state what's going on in the Heartbleed bug. So what we're talking about is the heartbeat. Anytime I established a secure connection, so Snubs, let's say that you're Facebook, okay, you're the Facebook server. I'm talking to you. You know how that you get that little padlock in the upper corner of your browser? It tells you that you're secure, right?
Yeah. It tells me I'm using HTTPS.
Exactly. I've Secure Sockets Layer or TLS, which gives me an encrypted tunnel between the client and the server. You're the server, I'm the client. Now, that's a good thing, because without that, anyone could just snoop in on our conversations and they could read everything that I'm sending and everything that you're sending back to me.
Especially if they have a Wi-Fi pineapple.
Brought to you by Hack5. No, but see, here's the thing. I can't just keep those open. Right. Once I've established one of those connections, I need a way to tell the server that even when I'm not using it, let's say I'm reading something that's on my page and I'm reading it for 3 minutes, my client, my computer still needs to be able to tell the server, I'm still connected, I still need you, don't shut off the connection.
So this is the heartbeat that's going between us.
Right. It's a nonsense piece of data. It's a minimal data set. It's a very small handshake, very small packet, essentially saying, keep me alive.
Okay.
Keep me alive. Keep me alive. And it does that every once in a while.
So why do we have these jelly beans up here?
Okay, so this is your system memory. You're the server, right?
Oh, yeah.
Don't eat your memory.
I won't eat my memory.
I'm just going to eat all the memory. All right, so
my hard drive just failed.
Now this one jelly bean, this is my heartbeat packet.
Okay.
Okay, so what I have to do is I have to send you two things. I have to send you my payload, and the payload is the jelly bean, right? But I also have to send you a description of how big this is.
Ah, okay.
So in all non-open SSL implementations of SSL, of the secure sockets layer, of the encryption, whenever I, the client, send something to you, the server, you check what you received against what I told you I sent.
Ah, okay.
So let's say I do this. I go ahead and I say, I'm sending you one jelly bean. I give it to you.
I just received one jelly bean.
Right, and that's it. And so you said, well, you told me that you sent me one jelly bean. I read that
a jelly bean.
It looks like a jelly bean, and now you send it back to me.
I'm sending you one jelly bean.
And there we go. So now the connection stays alive. If I did this, I am sending you 5 jelly beans, and I give that to you. What do you think you as a server do?
I only have one jelly bean.
That's it, right?
This is odd.
This is odd. It'll kill the connection, right? Or it'll ask for the heartbeat again.
Right.
That's simple checking, right? That's sanitizing your inputs. That's making sure that you've actually received what you expected to receive. That's good coding.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a bug in OpenSSL.
No.
Yeah. And Brian, if you go ahead and bring up that GitHub, it'll actually show you the code that goes behind SSL. Now go ahead and forward. What line was that? We need you to go to line 3,972. There, right there. See, so you see where it says read type and payload length first. These next 4 lines of code, actually 3 lines after the comment, are entirely responsible for the Heartbleed bug. Now let me explain. This looks kind of crazy, but let me explain what's here. HB type is just setting the type of data. Okay, so that's like from C# that just says this is the kind of data I'm going to be receiving.
Okay.
P++, we've seen that. It's incrementing the counter. So it's P plus 1, right?
Plus 1, yeah.
Now here's the big line. NS2, which is calling a function, because we know it's in parentheses, right? So it's calling a function, and it's passing it 2 parameters. P is the location, it's called a pointer, of the payload, the jelly bean. So it's telling it where the jelly bean is located.
Okay.
Right? Payload is the length. That's me telling you I'm passing you 1 jelly bean. Okay? Now a good piece of code would have had an extra line here that says, is P, the length of P, equal to the length of payload?
Right, yeah.
Right? So if I told you...
It would be sanitizing their
It's
code.
sanitizing the code, sanitizing the input. It's saying, if I told you I'm giving you 1 jelly bean, what is P? How long is P? Is P actually 1 jelly bean? If it is, allow it. If it's not, then X. Kill the connection.
And since they didn't do that, there is no line that says if it's this long, then it should equal P.
Right,
That pretty much means that the payload could be as long as they want.
Or short. So this is how it works. If you come back to me, now we're talking about this jelly bean, all right? So I'm still talking to you in the server, and I'm passing you this 1 jelly bean, and I'm saying, I sent you 64,000 jelly beans.
It looks like 64,000 jelly beans.
That's how OpenSSL works. Because it doesn't check, it's just going to trust me. And unfortunately, that's not good. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, well, he must have sent me 64,000 jelly beans, so I'm going to send him back the 1 jelly bean plus 63,999 jelly beans he shouldn't have received.
So
which means I take your system memory,
Hello, hacks.
and it's all for me.
And there you go. That's as English as I can get. That's a really simple explanation of how Heartbleed works. I know I promised you that explanation last week, but some people were complaining that my English wasn't quite English, so there we go again. Hopefully that's the last time I'll ever have to explain what Heartbleed is. Now, coming onto the show is the man, the myth, the legend. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Justin Robert Young.
Turn on your Heartbleed. Let it shine wherever you go.
I'm not sure what to do.
It's a little Neil Diamond for you.
Yep.
You ever heard of that Neil Diamond?
Young guy, yeah.
He's a pretty good, he's a singer. He's like that Justin Bieber kid. He's all over the place. No, great. Finally, the Gerbs has come back to Petaluma. I'm very excited.
Say, we really missed you. I missed Tuesday nights just hanging out in the brick house when you were here and just listening to just some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard.
Well, I mean, thank you. That's very, very nice. You're doing a great job here at Padre's Corner. And really, Schwood was on last week, so now I have to do better than him. It's just who I am.
It's just, it's friendly competition.
Yes.
Or one-upsmanship, whatever you want to call it.
Yes. No. Bald-faced, a shattered self-confidence, trying to make up by one-upping his partner. That's pretty much it.
It's absolutely mature. Now, before we get into the stories, before we actually start talking a little bit about tech, about what's going on in the world,
yeah.
Justin, what have you been up to? I mean, I know you've been busy, but there might be some people left behind on the Twit TV network who need to know some of the incredible content that you've been putting together.
Well, so for a couple of years, we did a show called NSFW Show right here on the old Twit boat. And we wound up going rogue and leaving the network. It was a big emotional thing. I cried. I got a haircut, started wearing sexier dresses. And I think I'm better now. Like, for me, as a person. So anyway, no, in all seriousness, we went off and did a independent show called Night Attack. Patreon.com/Night Attack is where you can go to get all the info on it, or nightattack.tv. New episodes. You were on an episode a couple weeks ago as part of our summer movie draft. All the same old bits. It's the same show as NSFW show, except now we curse.
Wait, summer movie draft? No, I'm afraid I haven't heard about that.
Oh, it's because right now in theaters is one of the movies that you selected as part of your stable to win this summer movie draft called Transcendence, which I read a review today that said very simply, Transcendence is what Inception would be if it were made by idiots.
And ladies and gentlemen, I believe that he just summed up my movie draft chances.
Mic drop.
But you know what? All I can say is this. The only one that mattered
was the Puerto Rican League.
You are the Puerto Rican League champ. Puerto Rican League champ. Oh. Yeah, no, it's super fun. I love that episode. I love the reason. I mean, like, why would we give a rat's patoot about Transcendence if we didn't kind of semi-bet on it in a movie draft? Like, that's what I love about the movie draft. Like, I care about films that I wouldn't otherwise care about. I see more movies because I feel invested in them. It's just a great time.
Now, I will say this. Because of the person that I am, and I want to include everyone, even those who are damaged, I took Will Harris on my team. I took the Foreigner onto my team.
You did.
And
the Union Jack.
It did not. That did not work out well. That was.
Hey, listen, man. You never know. Maybe Transcendence is gonna pull it out today. Maybe Johnny Depp, who lives in a computer, is gonna be better than other stuff. Who knows?
Ladies and gentlemen, go see Transcendence. It's the best movie of the summer. Now, let's get right into the news, Justin. I know that you've been aching to talk about some stories. Here's one for you. Did you know, I bet you didn't, because this is shattering. Did you know that the Russians are not just going to go to the moon? They're going to move in.
What?
That's right. Russian Deputy Prime Minister, who has an awesome name, Dmitry Rogozin, told the government daily that Russia is dedicated to establishing a permanent base on the moon. Now, in what may have been the passive-aggressive statement of the week, the Deputy Prime Minister also said, "The moon is not intermediate point in space. It is separate, even self-contained goal." That's a horrible name. It would be hardly rational to make some 10 or 20 flights to the moon and then wind it all up and fly to the Mars or some asteroids. Of course, he's making a dig at the U.S. space program, which did make 10 or 20 flights over to the moon and around it, and now is flying off to Mars or some asteroids. Now, I just want to throw this into you. Before we get too far into the story, do you even think that this is something that we should discuss? I mean, this is a deputy prime minister who is saying, "Nana, nana, nana, we're better than you."
Well, apparently, I mean, like, you know, listen, they always say that the 80s are back, you know, and they seem to be back in a big way with this, like, at least the kind of public sniping Cold War style between the U.S. and Russia. I guess when it comes down to it, yes, it matters, because up until SpaceX, you know, we were using Soyuz rockets, especially for manned missions, and now it looks like SpaceX is at least on track to maybe replace that for the United States. So Russian space programs have really been very important to America over the last several years. The fact that we have a hardening relationship with them is important, if not only to that factor, then also to the idea that we are into an issue where we are politicizing space again on a level that is really more meaningful than it was back in the 60s and 70s. Because in the 60s and 70s, I mean, like, listen, there was amazing the feats that they did to get people into space. However, the idea of sustainable colonies was really far greater than what the sum total of their ability was. And now it's not as crazy to think. Like, it's not something that is outside of a 10-year window of what could happen. So I think it is important to pay attention to it. Now, Kremlinologists will probably say, oh, well, it means something different if this dude says it, or this is just bluster, this doesn't really mean anything, and maybe this is all peacocking. But it is worth paying attention to.
Right, that's actually my take. Actually, I got to ask you, did you watch the SpaceX launch this morning?
No, I followed it on Twitter, but I did not watch it, and I'm very excited now. Apparently, we've yet to get the final pieces of data from the reusable element of the rocket launch, but it looked like from everything that they saw that it was at almost zero rotation coming down, and that's the goal. You know, that's a huge step forward. My buddy Andrew Main has said that, you know, on the Weird Things podcast, that this is a Kitty Hawk moment. When we can land rockets and reuse them, it changes the game in terms of space.
Well, but yeah, we also said that when the space shuttle went up. I mean, we said, oh, finally a reusable space vehicle. In reality, even though I think this is fantastic, and the fact that a private agency is doing it, I think that's doubly fantastic.
Yeah.
What we do find out is unless material science has greatly, like ridiculously advanced beyond the point of the space shuttle, they're still going to have to tear apart these vehicles every time they launch them. I mean, you don't just fill them back up with fuel and put them back on the pad. You got to tear it apart unless you're expecting a few of these to blow up.
Well, I mean, this is the plan, the business model of SpaceX is that this is that taking either in cost savings materially or in just being able to, I guess, have a whatever portion of the initial stage come back to you, you are going to be able to save from what we now know as space flight. So, like, are we going to go from zero to spaceship, when this happens? Probably not. But is it a huge step forward? I think unequivocally, yeah.
Yeah, I'm big on step forwards. Let's get back to the Russians because they're not done yet. Now, they have said that they're going to be doing several fold steps to the moon. The first is the Luna 25 rover mission scheduled for 2016. So they've already built most of it. They're in the final construction phases. Then there's Luna 26, which I believe is going to be a satellite that will map the moon, which has actually already been done. And then there's Luna 27, which will be a lunar rover mission to the moon's south pole. Now, here's the part that I find absolutely fascinating. The minister, when he was speaking, he said that the missions they're thinking of will require a rocket that can carry 80 tons of cargo into lunar orbit. That's not low Earth orbit, that's lunar orbit. Now, that's interesting because right now, the workhorse of the Russian space program is the R-7. It's also known as the Soyuz rocket. It's the rocket that the Soyuz capsule is lifted upon. It can carry about 7.5 tons into low Earth orbit. There's also the Proton, which can carry 20 tons into low Earth orbit. Now, the future generations of rockets, the ones that they're planning, the Angara and the Soyuz 2, should be able to do about 8.5 tons into LEO. But this almost is a space liar, liar, pants on fire. If you think somehow, just because you say you're going to do it, you're going to develop a rocket that can carry 80 tons, not into low Earth orbit, but into lunar orbit. I mean, what do you take from that?
So let's actually do the evolutionary chart, right? Like, on one end, we have North Korea, that, like, their space program is CGI that would normally be seen in a 90s direct-to-video production, right? And then we have NASA. Not to say that NASA is some paragon of virtue, but I think that a third-party observer would have to admit that, by and large, the mathematics that NASA releases seems to be legitimate. That they do not have a history of embellishing what they can or cannot do. They are fairly legitimate with their specs. So where does Russia stand? Number one, they've remained in the space game in a way that we haven't as Americans. And you can say that is wise or unwise. And I think there are very credible arguments to be made on both sides. But they have stayed in. Where do they land, though, in the public description of what is going on? Like, I don't think it's quite North Korea, but I don't think it's quite NASA. I think it's somewhere in between.
I can almost imagine the deputy minister with the North Korean hat on and saying things like, "We have the rockets to hit you in Alaska." It's like, well, okay, when it's nice to dream, it's all good to have a dream, but I mean, you're talking about an order of magnitude of power out of your rockets.
Yeah.
When already the rockets you have are stressing the limits of material science. We can't pack a whole lot more power into these bodies without some serious evolution in how we create propellant. I mean, you know this because I know you've talked about this on Weird Things.
Yeah.
It's not just, well, just build a bigger cylinder and pack it with more fuel.
No.
Because every pound of fuel needs more fuel to get it up.
Yes.
So as you make the rocket bigger, it gets more and more inefficient, which means by the time you get to 80 tons, and I actually did a back of the napkin sketch, you would need a rocket the size of New York. So,
to get 80 tons
get 80 tons.
into lunar orbit.
to get the payload, get 80
But,
tons
all
of
right.
payload plus the rocket. Yeah, that's about how much you need.
And we can ridicule this, and let's say this is similar. This is the Russian version of a series of tubes, right? Like, it's just somebody who has a barely, their idea of what something is, shooting their mouth off. Is there one thing that will stretch the world over? Poor countries, rich countries, democracies, autocracies, dictatorships, and oligarchies. There's one thing. It's that politicians will shoot their mouth off about dumb stuff that they don't know a GD thing about. And that's a fact, like Agnes, Agatha, Jermaine, and Jack. There is no doubt that this guy has no idea what the hell he's talking about, and he's spewing his mouth off with some random BS because he's hoping that somebody he talks to when he walks out of that room says, oh, yeah, no, we can make that happen. And instead, he got the guy when he walked out of that room that said, what the hell are you talking about? And it's going to take New York, the size of New York. And he's like, where's New York? I don't know. It's right down. It's like south of Connecticut, and it's like east of New Jersey. Oh, New Jersey. Yeah, okay. And then he figures it out, and he's like, okay, this is really dumb. I'm an idiot, but I'm a Russian deputy minister, and if I don't do 50 push-ups in front of Putin, then I'm going to get thrown in Siberia.
I think that's how it works. If you can't take off your shirt and have that rippled six-pack, you have to be able to lie about what your capacities and speed.
Exactly. And then he gave the scientist a stone-cold stutter and chugged 2 beers and middle finger the Kremlin.
I will say this before we move on. I hope the Russians get to the moon. I mean, in all seriousness, I want someone to do it. I mean, I want someone to prove that the technology has advanced to the point at which we can actually do a permanent establishment, a permanent base on another lunar body. However, and we know it's all going to be YouTube, right? I mean, everything's going to be on the internet when they do this mission. I want, when they put this thing up on the internet, when they upload it, I want Armstrong to be in the comment section with first.
It's a good move.
Let's do that.
It's a good move by Neil.
All right. Now, let's move on to the next story. I actually really like this. Did you know that the French have mastered closing time?
Like the Semisonic song?
Kind of like that, except, it's like time off.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Oh, no, yeah, no. I mean, I have heard that the French do enjoy their time off.
Yes, they do, and with good reason. They've found all sorts of links to a good time away and stress away from the work to know that this is a good idea. So they've actually created a legally binding labor agreement, the French Employers Federation, that will require employers to enforce the disconnection of employees after 6 p.m. Now they tried doing this before, but they really left it up to the discretion of the employees. They encouraged the employees, go home, get away from work, but no. Now they're saying that the employers need to make a good faith effort to make sure that they're not contacting their employees, they're not burdening them with any work after work hours. This is a response to the phenomenon of the smartphone, which essentially has expanded the workday as workers become more and more accessible after hours. So these French employers are now banned from contacting their employees, and according to the agreement, employees can ignore email or phone calls from their employers after hours without fear of retribution. Now, this sounds good. I actually kind of
Does
like
it?
this. But you can't enforce this, can you?
The French. I mean, I actually don't like this. I don't like this at all. And not because I like work. And certainly not because I like work when I don't want to be dealing with work. I hate the idea that I would have to stop. I would have to be breaking the law to do my job at times beyond when the workday is appropriate by government standards. Because for me, if I ran the world, the workday would be from noon to 10 p.m. And with some liberal breaks in between to just watch YouTube videos and take a nap and fart in my car seat while I'm listening to podcasts. Like, there is no element of my life that is coherent with a 9 to 5 schedule. I don't like it. Never liked it. and I have worked my life to find gigs that go around it. So the idea that it's like, oh, now the onus is on an employer. And also, what is an employer? Is an employer if I hired somebody, let's say I hired somebody to edit my podcast? Like, do I have to not talk to him after 6 p.m.? Do I have to keep all my contact with him between the hours of 9 and 5? What if I recorded a podcast after and everybody wants to get it as soon as it can be available? That just seems weird to me that you draw these arbitrary lines.
Yeah. Now, it should be noted that it's most likely that this is going to get struck down by the French Supreme Court. They're probably going to look through the exact same arguments that you just gave and say, wait a minute, this is unenforceable. Really, are you thinking that this is going to be some sort of legally binding contract between you and the employers union? The other thing is this. I tend to be a bit liberal. In fact, I tend to be, I like things that take care of the people, but this seems to be the worst example of the nanny state ever. At some point, I kind of want to tell people, if you know that you shouldn't be working, if you know that stress is killing you, if you know that your job is being unhealthy, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, right? I mean, you can't just assume, well, there should be a law because I don't have the wherewithal and I don't have the power to be able to stop working when I know that it's going to cause my premature death. That really
There's a long way between premature death, though, and like, crap, I gotta get this done. Like, okay. Right? Like it's like, oh, okay, I'll have this French fry and I die of a massive coronary. Like, there are years and years and very destructive cycles between the one little thing and the huge reaction, the huge, the bill that comes due. I really, I don't know. Like, this is not the kind of stuff that I would like, and it is as much as I think people kind of are draw these really hard lines between like conservative and liberal and everything, and then we all get really upset when something falls outside of those lines. It's very weird to me that happens, because stuff like this becomes like, well, no, yes, of course, we should be restricting when people work because they'll live happier and better lives. And we really don't think like, well, I don't know, like, is that everybody's life? Ain't my life. I like to work. I love working after 6 p.m., but I also like waking up at noon.
Exactly.
Like, so
I was just thinking that. I mean, my work day is different than the other priests who live in my house. Most of them are up by 6 o'clock and they're in bed by 9 o'clock. I normally don't get up till about noon, and I go to bed at 3.
Dude, yeah, I'm DMing with you at like 3 in the morning. Like, I was DMing with you like last night about doing this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, because that's just what some people like to work, and especially in this internet economy, it's amazing that we are allowed to do it. There's so many more opportunities to make life what you want, and what bothers me about well-meaning government things like this. And again, like, I don't want to be like, Pierce, I'll tell you what about the government. Like, I don't want to do that. But I will say this. When it comes down to government stuff, I usually personally find it to be it's best when the rules that a government makes is last resort. Because a law is something that is enforced by a gun. If you do not do this, somebody will show up to your house with a gun and tell you to do this. Like, if that is just how laws go. And I would rather try to work it out every other way up to that before we have to make legally binding agreements between the government and its populace.
Justin, you make some great points. And you know what? I really like that idea of approaching with maturity. But you know what else I like?
What?
Being naked.
Oh, let's go. It's been a while since I've gotten naked up here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first nipples on TV. No, specifically, I'm talking about a new agreement that they've made in Munich, Germany. Now, Munich has created 6 designated areas around the city in which clothing is optional.
Now, we know that nudism has been going on in Munich for years, so this is really just the authorities acknowledging what is already happening. Enthusiasts say it's not just about tanning, it's not just about getting, you know, a nicely browned body. It's also about building a community experience. I can sort of liken this to, say, the bathhouse experience in Korea, where it's just a way that people get together, you put away all pretenses, and you just enjoy each other's presence. Of course, there's a lot of questioning about why this is okay in Germany, whereas in the West, we're still so puritanical. Nudity needs to be covered up. The body should be ashamed. Yeah, well, okay, I'm giving you the devil's advocate. This is what we always say, right? We say, oh, America's puritanical. America is so body conscious. America has body dysmorphia and body shame brought on by our religious heritage.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Well, number one, I work in the Mission District where, like, the Folsom Street Fair goes on. And if you want to just, like, if you are in any way squeamish, then do not Google pictures about the Folsom Street Fair, because it is a place where people walk around naked and then in all sorts of crazy manner of dress. And then there are booths. And if you imagine, what do these people need to do in booths that they will not do when they are dressed like this in public, then understand that. So, I don't know. I guess maybe I've just been in, I guess, all right, here's my point. America's gigantic.
Yes.
And people outside of America tend to think of America in the way that other countries are set up. You know, Australia's a gigantic country. It doesn't quite have the population that America does. China has a larger population. So does Russia. But they're not quite as interconnected as America is. So therefore, America kind of gets lumped in as like a European kind of country. But it's like, to say that there are urban naked zones in Munich, Germany, a city in a fairly small country, like, that's the same thing as saying that there are naked zones in, Miami Beach. And there's naked zones in San Francisco. There's a lot of those here. It's not naked zones all throughout Europe. They're just in certain places. And America's gigantic. There's not going to be a lot of naked zones in, like, Des Moines, the downtown region of Des Moines. But that's kind of the other beautiful part about America, is that you could buy a gigantic plot of land and do whatever the hell you want on it. You can get naked, do cartwheels, backflips, back handsprings, and all sorts of other gymnastic activities with your bits flapping in the breeze. Doesn't matter. Like, there's plenty of opportunity to get naked here in America, and I'm sick of everybody thinking that we're a bunch of stick in the muds.
Actually, I like that point. I like what you bring up, because I think now I realize what rubbed me the wrong way about that article. It was when they got to that part where they're saying, well, of course, in the Western world, this would never be allowed because of blah, blah, blah. And it's all the things that you just mentioned, which is there's this very, like, 1800s image of what the United States is, that we're all some sort of glob of really, really body-shamed people, where in reality, I mean, if I wasn't cold or worried about stubbing my feet, I'd probably be walking around naked right now. In fact, how do you know I'm not?
Well, I mean, we can see you. Well, I guess maybe you could be Winnie the Poohing it right now, and just go shirt and no bottoms.
I mean, that's the way to go, right? I mean, that's popular.
All right, so here, Haulover Beach. I'm just gonna say, you want to go down to Miami, go to Haulover Beach. It's a naked beach. My uncle, for those of you who've listened to the Night Attack podcast, this is Uncle Bilbo, who we did on the first Night Attack album. I had a whole track about Uncle Bilbo. He's my hero. He figured out when a certain group of ladies from a local gentleman's club would all go to tan together on the naked section of Haulover Beach. And he would just go there every, Tuesday and Thursday when they were there, just to enjoy the scenery. So don't get in my face about the fact that, there are no naked zones in America. There are plenty of naked zones.
You realize you just came up with the show title, right? Don't get in my face.
All I do is give the show titles. This is my natural talent, Pod.
All right, I've been dreading this, but this is actually kind of a serious topic. I know it's probably going to tick off a lot of people in the chat room. Are you ready to become very unpopular?
I don't feel like popular positions have ever been. Cheap heat doesn't suit me, Padre.
All right.
I don't like to. Here, let's actually try to do something like just before we get unpopular.
Yep.
Let's say a bunch of really popular things.
Okay.
Right? Like, I'm sick of the broadcast networks.
I think that the popular media distorts body image.
I think cats are great.
Rich people should give us more money.
Yay! We're popular.
So chat room, keep that in the back of your head as we start going through this, because I know there's a lot of you who are incredibly passionate about this next story, and I want you to keep an open mind. I'm going to be taking some devil's advocate positions just to make sure that we've talked about all the different angles. So Justin, here we go. It's
the weather outside is frightful.
So we've got a story about, this is kind of blowing up right now. Yesterday, Snowden, in an annual televised Q&A with President Vladimir Putin, was allowed to call in and question the Russian leader on live TV. Now, his question was, does Russia intercept, store, or analyze in any way the communications of millions of individuals? Now, he asked, do you believe that by simply increasing the effectiveness of intelligence or law enforcement that you can justify placating societies rather than subjects under surveillance? Putin responded, we don't have a mass system of such interception, and according with our law, it cannot exist. He added that through the Russian law enforcement and spy agencies, although they do conduct some surveillance when investigating criminal matters, they must get permission from a court to target specific individuals. Quote unquote, mass-scale, uncontrollable efforts like those in the United States do not exist in Russia. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a lot of people who are saying, oh, man, well, I guess Snowden has officially become a patsy. He's being used. They're trading on his image. They know that right now he has a little bit of a cash to him because he blew the lid on the spy ring of the United States. And now Russia's taking advantage of it, bringing him out, trotting him out, putting his face on TV, in the papers, on the internet, and letting him be the sounding board on which Putin uses to say, oh, yeah, and all that stuff the United States did, yeah, we don't do any of that. We're morally upstanding. My question to you is this. Do you see him as becoming a patsy, or as he tried to defend himself later on, do you see him as someone who tried to pitch an honest-to-goodness question against Putin and Putin just softballed?
Yeah, and also he made specific that, like, he modeled his question after the question that was asked, and I forget these specifics, but from a representative to the NSA right before his leaks kind of completely changed the game. So he was trying to invoke that element to play devil's advocate. Few things to remember. Number one, Edward Snowden did not want to be in Russia. Edward Snowden wanted to be, he went to, I believe, China first?
Yeah, he did a tour.
He did. It was China first. That's where he leaked them from. And then he was in Russia en route to a country in Central or South America. And then that fell through because of the complications of American airspace and the fact that I'm sure the State Department got on the horn with pretty much every country that has non-extradition policies and said, if you take that dude, say goodbye to money from us. So he's in Russia now. Didn't mean to be in Russia, is in Russia. Is it, and then like he happens to be a bargaining chip at a time when Russia is very excited to have bargaining chips against the United States as relationships have kind of continued to fall apart between the two countries. Is it theoretically plausible, or at least understandable for Americans who are following this story, to believe that he is being used by the Russian government because they say, hey, listen, if you don't call and ask a question about this so we can show that we're better than America, then we're going to kick you out? Yes, it is very reasonable to assume that. And to think like Edward Snowden got really crazy about it, like, I can't believe people would think I would be a patsy. Yeah, No, it's reasonable to think that when you're doing that. And for somebody who has been as image conscious as Edward Snowden, it surprises me that he would imagine that this would play in any other way.
Yeah,
so
that's one of the things that bothers me, because I can understand his defense, and I see the agony. I mean, in his defense, he said, look, I gave up where I lived. I gave up being a citizen of the country.
All right.
Okay, and I'm not going to play into that. I'm not going to play into that. But,
come on, can we? Can we play into it?
Well, no. Again, here's the devil's advocate part of me. If he is serious about that, and he's still an intelligent person, he should have known how this was going to be seen. No matter what he said, he could have asked any questions. He could have said, "What color is your favorite color?" And they could have twisted it into, "Oh, Snowden's now a patsy of the Russian intelligence."
Yeah. Also, I mean, like and this is even in the Western interpretation of what went on. Like, this is a softball fest, right?
Right.
Which, by the way, if we had that in America, it would be a softball fest in America. Like, if it was like, hey, questions from America, like, whenever there's any, like, in presidential debates, we do town hall meetings, and they're like the most, like, they're provocative on a certain level, but they're certainly sanitized. So it's reasonable to assume that this is a very softball kind of thing. The fact that he is involved in it is suspect. But what I'm more interested in is just what I think is lurking under the surface. Is the Snowden, the mythology, right? Like the element that he is, this pioneer who has led us to a bright and beautiful dawn. And as we've kind of gone through this, he's always struck me as kind of a weird guy, even at the very, very beginning.
Truth, yes.
And I think it's very important to separate the actor from the actions. The actions that you might appreciate, which on a level, even if you don't agree about what he did or how he did it, I believe that this and WikiLeaks does a very, very good job of illustrating that in America's intelligence gathering agencies, we classify too much stuff. We put too much stuff behind a wall that is not searchable by our public. And I mean that for what the hell is going on? Is that him?
That's actually him, yeah. That's his young modeling photos.
Oh, look at that. You know, there's actually, I tell you, if there's anybody who is in the South Florida area, if you go to the Falcon Pub in Davie, Florida, there's a picture of me and a good friend of mine who looks almost exactly like Edward Snowden. There's a picture on their wall in a collage that makes it look like I'm drinking with Edward Snowden. I feel like I wanted to get that picture just so I can put it up and be like, oh, me and Eddie back in the day. Anyhow, I think that there is something to be said for the fact that, like, we classify too much stuff. But at the same time, there is nothing about Edward Snowden that has ever made me think that he is about the greater good. I feel like he is a dude who saw what's his butt with the white hair.
Wait, not butt white hair, but wait, which guy? I'm sorry. Oh, you're thinking
WikiLeaks.
of Assange.
Yeah, Julian Assange. I'm Julian Assange, and I talk like this. He looked at Julian Assange and said, "Hey, I could do that. I could be Bradley Manning. I could be Julian Assange. There is this new genre of people that are heroes to an audience, and I think that he has done an important thing, but I don't think that he is a good guy, you know? Like, and I think that's what's always bothered me, is that we have to believe that, like, everybody who does a good thing is a good guy. And I really don't believe that.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that has bothered me is I actually, if you break it down and you ask someone, do you think that your government should be spying on you without warrant? Do you think your government should be intercepting all your communications? Do you think your government should be doing X, X, and X?
by and far, most people, when they look at what was actually happening, they said, no, that was a bad thing. We had gone too far. We need to come back. You're not going to get any argument from me. Following up on your kind of, the weird guy comment, I think the thing that bothered me is the way that he did the revelations. And I don't want to get into a fight with the chat room about, well, he had no choice. But the way he did the revelations, exactly, that we predicted what's happening with Russia when this happened.
Yeah.
What he revealed was something that we know every country does. Every country spies. That's why they have spy agencies. But all he did was he suddenly made it possible for every other country who's doing this stuff to point to the United States and say, haha, you got caught.
Yeah.
And
that means we're sloppy, by the way.
We're sloppy, yeah, exactly.
And you should get caught if you're sloppy and if you want to be the best, which is the beautiful part about America, by the way. The beautiful part about America, and when you talk about American exceptionalism, is that it's not that we are born the best ever, which is what it gets kind of misinterpreted as, but it is that we hold ourselves to a higher standard. So if we screw up, then we screwed up. If you let some J.O. in Hawaii totally blow up your entire system, then you were running your system wrong, you know?
Right.
Like, if you're supposed to be the king S of F Mountain, like, when it comes to spying in the United States, and you let homeboy and his glasses sit in next to the Borscht machine in a Russian airport for 6 months, totally giving you a nana boo-boo, then yeah, like, you are totally, like, you are not doing the job right. But, like, does that mean everybody else is doing is like, going to be able to claim the moral high ground in a legitimate sense? No, probably not. Because before that, they were probably looking at the NSA and saying, these are the guys who were doing it right.
Now, Beatmaster in the chat room picked up on your vibe. He basically said, look, if one guy with basically an entry-level job was able to do all this, whose fault is that? And yeah. I think you're absolutely right. We got sloppy. How this happened is that and remember, they haven't paid much attention to, oh yeah, this needed to be changed and this was a horrible policy, and that it's all been this is a bad revelation, this is going to compromise national security. I am more interested in finding out what kind of program do you run where someone who has just gotten a job with one of supposedly the most professional spy agencies in the world was able to copy your most intimate secrets.
Well, and I've heard interviews of people inside the Pentagon, and this was with WikiLeaks, not Snowden.
Right.
That the problem is we classify too much. That we, when you are working with a classified library that is so gigantic that you need to bring on effectively entry-level people to back up your databases, then you have too large of data. Like you are not doing it in a smart way. This is not happening in the most efficient process possible. And if that's the case, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Well, chat room doesn't completely hate us. They seem to be having a decent discussion in there. So I think now is a good time to roll on to the next story. It's still a privacy issue,
okay.
But hopefully, it's about a company that no one cares about and no one has any strong emotional feelings. Let's talk about Apple.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have heard about iBeacon for a while. I actually find it an extremely fascinating technology. Now, we know that GPS is used pretty much outdoor. You also have assisted GPS. You have a Wi-Fi located GPS, which allows you a bit more leeway in how you locate people.
Yeah.
Apple released a technology called iBeacon. And the idea of iBeacon was, what do you use inside? Like inside a retail store or inside of a warehouse.
Yeah.
It's very low power Bluetooth. It's built into your iPhone 5. I know you've got one in front of you. Mm-hmm. And it allows you to have sensors that can determine where people are congregating in a certain space. Now, the cool thing about this is, for example, let's say I'm running an Apple store. I detect that you've been hovering over the MacBook Pros for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I know you're interested. Well, I can use your iBeacon to send you a coupon and say, hey, guess what? I'm going to give you $300 off if you buy it in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the retailer's dream. Okay, cool tech. But the marketers had one big problem, and that is you can turn it off.
Yeah.
I mean, if you shut down the marketing app, you can't send them a coupon. You can't figure out where they are. So Apple kind of fixed it. What they did in the last update to iOS in February is they made it possible to do what's called a delegation. The marketing app can hand over the iBeacon responsibility to the iPhone operating system, which means that even after you've shut off the app, they can still track you. Now, Jury, I want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
The knee-jerk reaction is going to be, privacy, I'm actually not too concerned about that. I mean, there's so many other ways that they could track you. That's not the thing I'm going to be really, really concerned about.
Well, and to be fair, when it comes to privacy, Apple has been better than their peers in general. You know, they have been always opt-in. They have tried to be at least publicly very upfront that you control your own privacy destiny. And they, by the way, have had an easier time to do that because they are not in the we are selling you to advertisers game in the same way that Yahoo or Google are.
Right.
That being said, iBeacon, I was at South by Southwest this year, and me and Brian, my co-host on Night Attack and formerly NSFW, were walking up and down 6th Street. Brian had a show. The show that was there before, I walked in, and I'm like, oh, my God, this dude walks by me, and I'm like, geez, you know you're at South by Southwest when every dude looks like Robert Scoble, right? And then next thing you know, the guy up on stage goes, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Robert Scoble. And he came up to the stage and he did a thing. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I guess that dude does look like Robert Scoble because he is. And like that entire meeting was salivating over iBeacon. iBeacon is the technology for the new age when it comes to marketing and apps and stuff like that. And it was because it was very under the radar on the iPhone 5. It wasn't like Apple made a gigantic deal about it. It wasn't like it got a lot of press. It was just baked in and ready to use. The fact that Apple's protecting it does not surprise me because to me it screams that it is what Apple wants to be, an underlying technology in what is beyond the iPhone, right? Like what is going to be the iWatch? What is going to be whatever the future of, because I think that now the future of technology is taking this and breaking this into various pieces. Like that we are going to have better, now that we have the ability to build devices that are portable and always on and always connected, we can now focus on form equaling function in like maybe we need stuff that's only an earpiece. Maybe we need stuff that's only a watch. Maybe it's Google Glass. It's going to be all the different ways that we can figure out ways to take the functionality we love about the smartphone experience and building it into the most natural ways we can interact with that. And Apple thinks that iBeacon is not only from the marketing standpoint, but also from the useful information standpoint, from getting you the most useful element. Let's say you're at a ballpark and somebody comes up, let's say we were back when Mark McGwire was chasing the home run record, right? And every time Mark McGwire came up to bat, you had your iWatch, and it knew you were at the ballpark, it knew you were there, and it said like, Mark McGwire is only 2 home runs away from hitting this record. Now all of a sudden, you have a better experience because of the ability that they knew where you were and that you are more likely to want to know context to the event that you were next to. So I get why they're protecting it.
Yeah. We talked about this briefly on This Week in Enterprise Tech. The take that I wanted to go with is when you look at this sort of technology, this is the sort of stuff that maybe 20 years ago people would have been crying bloody murder. Of course I don't want anyone to be able to locate me. Of course I don't want anyone to be able to sell my data. Of course I don't want anyone to be able to customize marketing to me. That's a massive invasion of my privacy. The interesting thing is, I think you touched on this. This is why Apple is, they're not hiding it. They're unashamedly saying, yeah, we turned it on. Yeah, you could still turn it off if you turn off Bluetooth, but we think it's a good feature. they're saying essentially we live in a big data society, and in a big data society, everything needs to be quantified. In a big data society, you want as many data sets as possible because, and here's the key, if you give us more data sets, we will give you something of worth. We will give you something that you will like, and we believe that that will be worth your trade-off in privacy. So my question to you is this. I'm sure we're going to see other manufacturers move towards this. We're going to see Samsung. We're going to see HTC. We're going to see Motorola. Google's going to bake it into Android. Microsoft must be salivating to make this a standard part of every Windows device.
Yeah.
So where are we on the slide of privacy? I mean, it seems to me as if if now we can accept what we would have considered unthinkable 20 years ago, where will we be 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
But that's the thing, is that we're already in a process of redefining what privacy is.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the idea that it's worth giving up progress for privacy. I don't think that's ever been the case. We've never made that bargain, going back to like the railroad, right? Like, it's not like we're like, oh no, you better not, like, I'm going to send a third party to buy my railroad ticket. Like, we've always like understood that there's going to be a tracking if we want to get the new hot technology. That's always been what we decided. So now that stuff is really, 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 really quantifiable, we need to decide what we really want to keep secret. What are the elements that we really hold dear that we would find very, very weird about stuff? Because like right now, that line is pretty much next to nothing.
Yeah. New
like, and
generation,
that's
new
like,
rules.
and it's been like that since Gmail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like and I was certainly one of them. I still am somebody that was high-fiving when I got my Gmail invite back when it was invite only, right? And at that time, the controversy was, yeah, we're going to scan all your emails. But don't worry, we're not, it's not a person,
Anonymize it. We don't care
it's
about
a
you.
thing. Which is funny because that's how they got out of that controversy. The controversy back in Gmail initially was like, a person's not going to be looking at it. When it's like, now we're like, yeah, dummy, because like a person would be the least efficient way that you would monitor email. It would be crazy to have somebody looking at something. It's like, no, you just search for metadata and like they take metadata and sell it to advertisers. Now, let's say if the NSA says, hey, you're already scanning emails. What if we say, we're the NSA, you need to give us all this metadata, or we're going to make life bad for you. And also, if you talk about it, that's treason. And I don't know if you've go ahead and Wikipedia treason lately, but it means death if you talk about it, right?
Treason is normally that.
Yeah. No. That one, you can look that one up over under W for what whoa if you fall afoul of the treason line. So it's like, I don't care about my email. And I guess I haven't cared about my email since, 2004 or 5 when Gmail was released. So what do we care about going forward? I don't know if it's really much of anything. I know that the tracking stuff is a little bit more specific, as well as, when Xbox had the idea of like the always on Kinect camera, which is funny because that came like before the Snowden leaks.
Right.
And everyone was like, oh, whatever.
Who cares?
Infowars.com. Go on with your crazy theories about how the police are going to look at stuff. But then again, if you look at it like, hey, listen, let's say somebody's murdered in front of an Xbox Kinect camera. Is that not, if they're storing it, if Microsoft is storing it anywhere, right? Or has the ability to pull up anything from the hard drive of the computer because it's networked and always on, like, are they legally required to prevent or to turn over that kind of stuff in the same way that a nightclub is required to turn over surveillance video if somebody leaves, a suspect leaves with a murder victim?
We used to say that privacy never survives the first brush with an emergency. It's normally the first thing that goes out. You know, if, as you said, yeah, people are going to say, wait a minute, is this right to privacy so sacrosanct that we're not going to catch a murderer if we have the opportunity?
Well, no, but that's when we become aware of it. Privacy doesn't do well when it brushes up with convenience in a hallway. Like, we've always been willing to give up
You're making
privacy.
me sad, Justin. You're really making me sad.
But I mean, but the thing is, like, I don't think this is new. I think this has just always been what we do. The only difference now is that we are better at doing things faster. Like, that's the only difference, is that we're more awesome at creating our world to be better, that we come into these privacy convenience conflicts like so frequently.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Justin, I'm thinking that now might be a good time to move away from the privacy. We've survived our brush. I think that this has been a good time for us to talk about things of tech and of organic privacy. But maybe you think we could talk a little bit about the tech?
Sure.
Now, not too long ago, I got a chance to get my hands on some sweet hardware from Dell. And I know it's kind of strange that I'm saying that. I haven't used a Dell in a really, really long time, but...
Not since that poor pot-smoking kid was hawking it, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I miss him. Was it Steve? I miss Steve, dude.
Sure, dude, you're getting a Dell.
I'm getting a Dell. But hey, you know what? I just might. I'm Father Robert Balacer with Twit TV, and this is the Dell Precision M3800. At 0.31 to 0.71 inches thick, 14.65 inches wide, and 10 inches high, the M3800 is a svelte 4.15-pound Dell business class notebook. Dell brought the weight of the machine down by using a combination of aluminum and carbon fiber in the chassis, making it durable while giving it a mean profile and forward-looking style. The M3800 is powered by a 4th generation Intel Haswell i7-4702Q quad-core CPU running at 2.2 gigahertz, boostable to 3.2 with 6 megabytes of cache. The CPU sits on top of 16 gigabytes of DDR3 1600 megahertz memory and is supported by integrated Intel 4600 graphics, as well as a discrete NVIDIA Quadro K1100M with 2 gigabytes of dedicated GDDR5 memory. The integrated graphics will be engaged during normal usage for better battery life, while the Quadro will be automatically activated when more graphics horsepower is needed to drive the pixels. Speaking of pixels, the M3800 has a lot of them, 6,840,000 to be exact. The M3800 sports a Gorilla Glass covered 15.6-inch ultra-sharp 3800 by 1800 LED backlit QHD Plus panel, complete with 10-point multi-touch overlay. The screen is bright and its colors well saturated. The viewing angles are generous, and it might quite simply be the most beautiful screen I've ever seen on a laptop, PC or Mac, bar none. Storage comes in the form of a PCI Express 512GB Samsung SM841M SATA SSD, providing 516 megabytes per second of read and 401 megabytes per second of write. Networking is provided by an Intel dual-band wireless and Bluetooth adapter that supports 802.11a, B, G, N, and AC, as well as Bluetooth 4.0. There is no integrated gigabit Ethernet port, so you'll have to use a USB adapter for wired network access. The left side of the machine sports a full-size HDMI output, a mini display port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, a combo audio jack, and a battery life indicator. The right side of the unit adds a media card reader, a USB 2.0 port, and a third USB 3.0 port. The keyboard is properly spaced, solid with decent travel and feedback, and user-toggled backlit keys. Likewise, the multi-touch trackpad is responsive and gesture-enabled, properly weighted for fast but accurate touch. 2 speakers below the palm rest provide passable sound, even if not overwhelming. But enough about specs. Let's hear about the performance. In PC Mark Vantage, the Precision M3800 scored 20,738, putting it firmly in the desktop replacement realm of the venerable benchmark. Though the Quadro graphics part and the 3800 by 1800 resolution means that the M3800 isn't really made for gaming, it still has enough power to eke out a score of 8594 in 3D Mark Vantage. All that power does take a toll on the M3800 in the form of battery life. Runtime is so-so, with a 91 watt-hour lithium-ion battery providing about 6.5 hours of moderate use. Beyond the benchmarks, the M3800 is a joy to work with. The combination of the quad-core CPU, generous amounts of system memory, and fast SSD means that everything was faster. In particular, Adobe Premiere was brilliant on this notebook, flying through rendering tasks faster than the Mac Pros we use here at TWiT. Even the ventilation was done right, with dual fans and a heat spreader keeping sound to a minimum during regular computing tasks. The Dell Precision M3800 is available now. Pricing runs from $17.99 to $26.30. Let's start with the cons. The first thing has to be price. $25.55 is a lot of cheddar, but I'm not saying that it's not worth it. I mean, you do get a lot for your money. This processor, this screen, it is a mobile desktop replacement. Still, $25.55 is a lot of money. The second thing has to be battery. Even with this 91 watt-hour battery, we were getting between 6 and 7 hours of life, and that's if we really squeezed. That just doesn't compare favorably to a lot of other notebooks. Now, granted, it has a bigger screen, it has a dedicated graphics processor, it has a faster CPU, but still, you know, if it's going to be mobile, it probably should last a little bit longer. The third thing is the lack of an integrated Ethernet port. Now, I know there are going to be people out there who say, well, why not just use a USB dongle? And that's true, you can do that. But if this is really a business class notebook, to me, it says that that should be integrated into the packet. I shouldn't have to carry around an extra piece to get the functionality out of my business class machine. Now let's look to the pros. On the pro side, of course, is the speed. They just really pack this thing with everything that you need to go fast. It's got that dedicated graphics processor. It's got a quad-core i7. It's got 16 gigabytes of memory. It's got 512 gigabytes of SSD and a PCI Express slot. It's just packed to the gills with all the things to make it go. But again, it's not just about speed, it's about style. I love the magnesium/aluminum/carbon fiber construction. It feels good, it feels solid, and more than that, it just looks good. Everything from the cover to this rubberized surface just feels as if they put their homework into giving you a notebook that you can use and show off. And that can be important. The last thing I really like about this is just the accessibility of all the features. The ports are spaced right on both sides. It just feels light. It feels really fast, and it feels like I can carry this around and have it be my daily driver without being either too heavy or too fragile. In other words, when I compare the pros and the cons, well, the Dell Precision M3800 is a definite buy. I'm Father Robert Balacer with Before You Buy.
I have to say, I really liked that machine. It wasn't just the resolution. It was the fact that it just works so well. It was on so many fronts, from what it was constructed of, from the style, from the touchscreen. Now, one thing I will say is they shipped it with Windows 7. I don't think they should do that. The problem with Windows 7, even though it's really good for business, that machine was designed for 8. And so I think there were a few devices, specifically the power management devices, that did not work well with 7. I saw my battery life just drop, whereas when I switched it over to 8, it did just fine. So take it for what it's worth. All my production machines are on 8. I think people should at least give it a try. Just ditch that nasty modern UI. Justin, I know there's no tech that you wanted to discuss. There's no tech that no obsessions that you wanted to bring out on the stream.
No.
But I wanted to give you a chance to say hi to the TWiT army. I know a lot of the Night Attack guys made it over here, but it's so good to see you. You know, to flash up a little bit of a diamond.
Little diamond. Although I'll tell you, tech-wise, I do have some breaking news that I saw on my phone here while the show is going on.
Hit us.
Nike has fired their entire FuelBand division.
No.
And are out of hardware. They are.
So they gave up. They're done.
They're in the software game.
Wow.
Now, what do you think that says more about the declining wearables for fitness, like I have a Fitbit on my arm, or is it that they believe that fitness will be owned by the Samsungs and the Apples and the Googles of the world, and they just want to be a bigger part of that and not selling their own wares?
Yeah, I think as we look at the wearables market, what we're going to see is the major players are just going to take the lion's share just because it's easier for them. I mean, Samsung and Apple can get a deal on the hardware that Nike or Fitbit will never be able to. And so those companies are saying, wait a minute, we are making razor-thin margins on the hardware, so why are we even making the hardware?
Yeah.
If we know that I can run an app on an Android device, then isn't that what I should be selling? Isn't that what I should be focusing on? And yeah, it's kind of sad because I like to see a lot of companies involved, but I think over the next couple of months, we're going to see more and more of a consolidation in the wearables market, which is sad because honestly, it hasn't even really been born yet.
Well, but this is everybody scouting out what's worth it. Now, really, the only thing that I'm really excited about is I was at the Nike company store a couple months ago, and I decided not to buy a FuelBand. That was it turned out to be a really good decision by me, considering they're going to all be gone in a couple months. But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see, and whatever all these Google devices that are coming out, the Google Wear devices, which by the way, and this I haven't been on a tech network for so long. Did you notice that in that Google Wear video, no one was wearing Google Glass?
I did. It's two separate divisions, remember. Big company.
It is. I mean, Google Glass is a big thing.
I don't want to
It's a
waste
big
it here.
thing.
We are.
It's
actually gonna be
Sergey's
talking about
thing. You'd think somebody would wear it.
No, that's actually a really good discussion, but I don't want to waste it at the end of a show. So
Sure.
I'm going to leave.
That's
people
fine.
in suspense.
Good. Kick me out. I don't care.
No, but how about this, jury? Say goodbye to the people. Tell them where they can find you. Tell them everything they need to know.
Twitter.com/Justin R. Young is where you can find me. That's where everything gets talked about. Other than that, nightattack.tv every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Me and Brian Brushwood just chop it up, shoot the breeze. And other than that, that's all I got. I love you guys. I love Twit. I love Padre. It's always it's a pleasure to just hang out and chat with you in anything. Either on the phone, on Twitter, or right here on Padre's Corner. I very much enjoyed this show, and I hope it goes on forever.
Justin Robert Young, it's great to have you back, and I do miss you. And we'll catch you every Tuesday night, and maybe doing some weird stuff too.
Indeed.
All right, indeed. Now, folks, I want to talk to you just for a moment. I want to thank you for watching Padre's Corner. I want to thank you for actually making it quite successful. There's a lot of people who are downloading it. I was actually planning on making a feed that was going to be open to everyone, but we've got some news coming up about Padre's Corner probably within the next 2 or so weeks. I want to share it with you, and so I'm going to delay the announcement until that time. Now, don't feel bad because we're going to be coming back week after week. In fact, next week we've got Scott Johnson coming on to the show. He's going to tell us all about how Nerdtacular is turning the world into one big geek out. Actually, I have no idea what he's going to talk about, but I hope that's one of the topics. I also want to let you know that you can find me all over the Twit network. That's right. On Mondays, you're going to find me on This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's a show dedicated to data centers, to networks, to big iron, to all the things that connect us around the world and the security and methods that you need in order to survive in a connected world. You can find me at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time at live.twit.tv. You can also find me on Thursdays. I've got 2 shows on Thursdays. The first one is Know How with Brian Burnett at 11 o'clock. The second one is Coding 101 with Shannon Moore, Snubs, at 1:30 p.m. So go ahead and stop on by and say hi to the Padre, especially in our chat room at irc.twit.tv. Till next time, just want to remind you that I'm Father Robert Balasaire, and, well, this has been Padre's Corner.